I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. Our previous interview with the band Heavy Color recommended the Rough Draft Diaries head over to the Toledo Museum of Art, not to look at any particular exhibit, but to go a little behind the scenes and meet with someone who is in charge of bringing these events and programs to the public.
I am the manager of programs here at the Toledo Museum of Art.
That's Scott Boberg.
And what that involves is bringing together opportunities with lecturers, with musicians, with all kinds of people to connect with our exhibitions, to connect with our collection, to provide opportunities for people who maybe have never been to the museum before.
Scott, in a way, is a newcomer to the museum as well. He moved to Toledo about a year and a half ago.
I have a sort of long, circuitous path to being here at this museum. I'm from Los Angeles. I was born in Hollywood. I just started as a volunteer in museums in Los Angeles, and I worked at the Santa Monica Museum. I worked at the University of Wyoming, Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati, the Aspen Art Museum, Detroit, and here. So I've kind of spiraling around the country since the late 1980s, but here, most specifically, what I love to do is programs.
Some of those programs Scott brings to Toledo involve film.
January 21st is a screening of a 1928 silent film with Lon Chaney called Laugh Clown Laugh that will feature a live score that is being written for us by a composer named Frank Paul.
And some of them can include music.
We are honoring the history of the peristyle because in 1935, Igor Stravinsky played in the peristyle. So we're recreating that concert 81 years to the day later. That's just a couple.
The rest are a little bit of everything.
So it's music, it's film, it's performance, it's talks and conversations, sometimes bicycle rides, things extending out into the community. It's the whole gamut of things.
Like Scott, I'm fairly new to the Toledo area. When I first started producing radio stories, I had a hard time getting connected with possible story ideas, since no one really knew who I was, and I wasn't really familiar with the city. I wondered if Scott felt that same anxiety in choosing what programs to bring to the public.
Sure. I think if I didn't feel pressure in some way, I wouldn't necessarily be doing my job well, because you want to really honor the institution, you want to honor the local history, value the people who are here. So I think I'm always looking at what is maybe not known in Toledo in terms of people who live here or its history. It's a tremendous collection, and so it's finding ways to honor this collection. Yeah, I think it's always there trying to do it right.
So how does Scott choose these programs?
Sometimes it's just serendipity in terms of conversations with someone. I think one of the things that I love is just words or names or titles. It's certainly a collaborative process in terms of looking at our exhibition schedule, for example, and seeing what special exhibitions are coming up. But talking with people like curators or other people in the community, just looking online and reading articles, you connect up with people in an interesting way. So I have a sense of what programs might be, but it really depends on the topic. And you sort of follow a path of referrals, and you end up someplace interesting.
Following referrals and ending up someplace interesting may sound familiar to Rough Draft Diaries listeners. I mean, it is the setup of our whole show. But that's not the only thing the Rough Draft Diaries and the program director of the Toledo Museum of Art have in common. We've both noticed, through the people we've met, that there is a resurgence happening in Toledo, Ohio.
It was about a city center that had been, in a way, evacuated for a variety of reasons, but this idea of movement out to the suburbs, the collapse of some industry, and then it's kind of an infill. Even in Los Angeles, where I'm from, there had been a downtown, and so often that void is filled by creative people, artists and musicians. And then people realize, wow, there is something amazing happening. And so there's, I think, a resurgence of downtown Toledo. It's just as it's kind of unfolded in an amazing way in Detroit recently. It's just a slightly smaller scale than Detroit, but I see it as a parallel.
Toledo, I think, is having some kind of resurgence. And the events held at the Toledo Museum of Art help connect people with that movement. But Toledo isn't the only place Scott hopes to connect his audience with. He's thinking on a much larger scale.
You know, I met someone once, and she said that her parents used to drop her off at the museum on Saturdays, and that she discovered that there was a world. And it happens at a time where you are just inspired by everything. You don't even realize what you're taking in. So there's something that is so vital in terms of museums as a space to connect you with the world, to connect you across time, to connect you across expressive media. And I think without museums, I think without cultural expression, we would just go about our lives in such an uninspired way. And I think culture creates a platform that sometimes we forget how important it is, but it's there and it makes a difference in our lives.
I'm Haley Taylor, and you've been listening to the Rough Draft Diaries.